You are listening to Viewpoints from Place Cloud. Cultural researchers tell stories of places from around the world. For the full multimedia experience and to support the creators you enjoy, visit placecloud.io.
You're stood outside the National Gallery on Trafalgar Square. This viewpoint is going to guide you through some of the architectural history of this space and its buildings. This wasn't always a public square as we think of it today. Until the late 1820s, Charing Cross was a busy junction between the new West End and the old bustling city of London, and it was filled with aristocratic townhouses and palaces, such as the now demolished Northumberland House. Many people know that Trafalgar Square was named and designed to commemorate the British defeat of the French in the Napoleonic Wars at the Battle of Trafalgar. Nelson's Column was built in the late 1830s and takes its architectural form from a Roman triumphal column, like Emperor Trajan's column in Rome, built in the 2nd century. The triumphal column is an architectural form that was also used in early modern London, such as the Monument to the Fire of London on Fish Street Hill, built in the 1670s. At the north of Trafalgar Square originally lay the Royal Mews, where the royal carriages and horses were kept. When George III purchased Buckingham House, the Royal Mews was moved further down the Mall, and a decision was made to build a national gallery to house the nation's public collection of art, like those on continental Europe. The decision to build a national gallery and create a national public space shows a real 19th century preoccupation with an idea of national identity. Around the corner on Great Russell Street, the British Museum was being built, and just down the road in Whitehall, the Houses of Parliament were being refurbished. Historians have thought of Trafalgar Square as the sitting room for the nation, a place where the family gathers and also where the family fall out. It is a space of national pride and of national protest. Even the design and layout of Trafalgar Square supports this interpretation, with its large, open space that was, at its time, pretty much the very centre of London. In a way, it's quite an informal, quite open space, and this encourages a sense of there being a crowd, a space within which to gather. However, some historians have argued that the fountains and plinths were actually designed to break up crowds, to control and organise a space to stop too many people gathering all together. If Trafalgar Square is the sitting room of the nation, then its critics have called it the mantelpiece over the fireplace of the family sitting room. This tongue-in-cheek comment by 19th century architectural critic Hugon is indicative of how architectural historians and commentators alike have thought about the National Gallery as a bad piece of architecture. The National Gallery was built in the 1830s and designed by architect William Wilkins. And in one sense, this idea of bad architecture is to do with the constraints of the site in the 1820s and 1830s. As the site was cleared, it sloped down towards Whitehall. It also has James Gibbs' impressive St Martin in the Fields Church at the other corner, and behind it was a barracks and workhouse. But that doesn't really explain away some of the weaker elements of Wilkins' design. It's not a very expressive building, it's quite plain, and the terminating pavilions and porticos at either end of the building are a little boring. It's a little thin, again constrained by the size. As well as appearing quite thin, the building also feels incredibly stretched, with 13 sections either side of the central portico entrance. Again, this is to do with some kind of limitations placed on Wilkins as the columns on the porticos at either end of the building were taken from the demolished Carlton House, the home of the Prince of Wales, and then George V. Finally, the dome, many feel, is far too small for a building of this size and sits completely out of place with some of the other architectural elements. Wilkins was a Greek revivalist. He used architectural elements and forms taken from ancient Greece. This new architectural style in the early 19th century came about particularly because Britain's empire was expanding along the southern Mediterranean, and after the British defeat of Napoleon in 1799 in Egypt, this also included large chunks of North Africa. The British presence there coincided with lots of archaeological activity, and therefore lots of discoveries of old architectural sites. Much older, in fact, than the Roman sites, which was the basis of English architecture before the 1770s. There were alterations and additions to the National Gallery made by Sir James Pennethorne in the 1860s, Sir Charles Barry, who also was the architect of the new Houses of Parliament in the 1870s, and Sir James Taylor in the 1880s. The Sainsbury Wing was added to the west of the original building and was completed in 1991.